I'm glad to see other people get verklempt on that song, too. Love that song. Thank you, Robert. Thank you. And that's perfect because our topic today is living in the natural rhythms of life. Living in the natural rhythms of life. So we just had the autumnal equinox. And that is that moment, twice a year, when day and night are equal. And I don't know about the rest of you, but fall is always one of those times where I feel like the veil is very thin between this life and something greater than we are. I think that's why everyone says, I love fall. My family teases me because every time I see a yellow leaf, I go, I love fall. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you saw my daughter and my husband teasing. You know, my daughter posted something to him, did you know Mom liked fall? He's like, oh, I've heard your mom likes fall. You know, and it's become a joke. But I do love fall, and I hear it everywhere. I love this time of year. I love fall. How many people love fall with me? Thank you. Oh, 2 hands over there. Thank you. I think that we love fall because of the beauty of nature, but I also think that there is some intuitive thing that we do feel, that we are part of something greater, that veil is very thin. And I think it calls us to something. And so, what better time to talk about the natural rhythms and how we fit into it than now? You know, Jesus, in many of his parables, the vast majority of his parables, use nature to illustrate the universal laws and principles that he always taught. So nature was huge in the teachings of Jesus. And almost every parable that's there, I was reading through them, I was like, oh, I'll do a little sermon on the parables. Well, no. But I did. And you know why? It's because there's so many based in nature. I couldn't decide which one. There's the parable of the wheat and tares. There's the parable of the sower. There's the parable of the mustard seed. They're go on and on and on. And I think it's because that master teacher showed us that we don't have to remember a lot of laws. We don't have to remember a lot of dogma. We just need to look around and learn from our surroundings. And one of the key things about nature that I was really aware of this week is that nature always seeks balance. It always seeks balance. I mean, the autumnal equinox is part of that. Night and day are equal. We are always looking for balance. You look at the cycles of life, and they are balanced. You know, the earth tips on its axis in just the right time and just the right way. Days are now going to get shorter until we hit December 20-something, 2nd or so. And then it'll go back the other way, and they will get longer in exactly the same increments every year. It's predictable. It's always in balance. Watch water. Water will never, ever, ever flow uphill. Ever. It will always balance. If a lake is deeper on one end, the water doesn't tilt. It seeks balance. It's always balance. Watch how we breathe. Frequently, whenever I get stressed out about money, I like to equate it with breath. We breathe in the exact equal amount that we breathe out. We never are afraid when we let go of that breath that we won't know where our next breath is coming from, so we don't hoard it. I can't breathe out because I might not get any more air if I do. We breathe out, knowing with absolute certainty it's there again. We do that with money. I'm not going to give this because I don't know when I'm going to get any more. But we don't have to do it with breath. Always in balance. Always in balance. So that's how I believe nature is telling us to live our lives. We need to seek balance. Balance between doing and being. Balance between giving and receiving. Balance between play and work. Balance. How many of you play on a regular basis? I'm going to guess about, half. I would guess about half of us play on a regular basis. That's that balance. How many of you work all the time? That's not balance. And I'm raising my hand too, not as an example. I'm kind of in that mode here. I work way more than I should. So nature always teaches us to seek balance. Always. When you read the Bible, if you read the Bible, Jesus always talked about this. If you look at the construction of the stories in the Bible, and Jesus' life is balanced into thirds. He's in his ministry, he sleeps, and then he goes off and does something else. It's always in that construction. He will get up, they will say that after spending the night in Galilee, Jesus and his disciples, so he just slept, then they got up and he performs a miracle, and then the next line is almost always, and then Jesus went apart a while. Kind of went, okay, I'm done here. You guys have fun. I'm going to hang out with who I want to hang out with. Balance. So that's the first thing. Always seek balance. If you're feeling out of balance, look to nature. I mean, the leaves turn at the right time. Aren't they beautiful right now? Oh my God. They turn at the right time. I've often tried to figure out, why do leaves turn at a certain time? Like, how can I schedule my fall so that I can go to the mountains on the peak weekend? There's such a complicated grouping of factors that go into this. It's, not only the amount of light in a day, that's part of it, but it's how much water we got over the summer, it's the average temperature at night, it's this whole combination of things, all perfectly balanced. There is no manager out there other than the divine spirit who is figuring out how do we turn up the relative humidity so that we can get the leaves to turn a weekend early for tourism. Nobody does that. Nature just does it. Just does it. Year in, year out. Seek balance. The other thing nature teaches us, allow it to be easy. Allow it to be easy. How many of us like easy? How many of us live easy? I noticed not quite as many hands went up. We work really hard, which that goes back to the Protestant work ethic, which is great. You work before play, work hard, get it done. That's wonderful. But nature, everything's easy. If you look at the teachings of Taoism teaches us always to be in the natural flow, always to let it happen. Grass doesn't strain to grow. Those leaves aren't out there trying to figure out how they're going to turn orange by the 28th and creating a committee and a reverse timeline to figure out how do we get it done. They just do it. It's easy. One of the greatest examples of this is water. Watch water. Water is the most powerful force on the planet. I did research on this because I thought probably electricity was, but no, actually, water is the most powerful force on the planet. Water created the Grand Canyon. Water, hydroelectric power, generates most of our cities. After the Great Depression in the 1930s, the TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, was created to channel the water of the Tennessee River to provide electricity in the late 30s and 40s to much of the South that didn't have electricity. And they had to harness water to get it there. So water is not passive, and water is not weak, but water is effortless. It is effortless. It will find the path of least resistance. If water is flowing downhill and it hits a boulder, it doesn't stop and form a committee to figure out how we move the boulder. Water just goes around. And by going around, it wears away the resistance. Over time, it wears away the boulder. It's easy. There is never struggle in nature, never strain. So as we go through our lives, how many times do we let it flow and let it be easy? And how many times do we hit a roadblock and stop and say, I got to figure this out. I got to figure this out. I recently was reading a book, and I just lost the title, Strengths Finder. Strengths Finder. It's been out for a while. You guys have probably seen it. It's a little, 2.0, Strengths Finder 2.0. The premise in that is that only do the things that are easy for you. Only do the things you're good at. Now, so much personal development work that I did in the 80s and early 90s, when you go to all the workshops and the seminars, it tells you, find your weaknesses and then really focus on those. The things that are easy, you've got that mastered, don't worry about that. But the things that, are hard, really study that and work on that and do that. And that's the old paradigm. What StrengthsFinder says is, no, we are more effective when we let it be easy in every aspect of our lives. So I recently hired a bookkeeper. Because you know what? That was easy. Not hiring a bookkeeper was not easy. It was hard. But I didn't do it for a long time because I thought, I should be able to learn this. I'm a smart woman. They have programs for this. They have software that is supposed to make this easy. As a matter of fact, I had a friend tell me that QuickBooks is idiot-proof. I will tell you, it is not idiot-proof. I went to the bookkeeper thinking I turned things over in really good condition, and she starts asking me questions, and I'm like, wait, the what? How are you allocating the bookstore inventory? On a spreadsheet by title? No, I mean, which account? Income? Anyway, that's not easy for me. So don't do it. Don't do it. Now, peak performance studies have started to show in the last 20 years, over and over and over again, we are at our peak when we are in our zone of genius, when we are doing what is easy for us, not when we are struggling and beating our head against the wall to do what we can't do. The amount of time that we take to do things that we aren't good at actually sabotages our dreams and keeps us from doing what we are good at. My daughter, who I talk about a lot, she's profoundly gifted, and that's not just a brag. That's actually an IQ category. When she was a little girl, we had her IQ tested. It's 185, and that falls in this category called profoundly gifted. Her struggle always is that she can do a lot of things. She can. Because she has a really high IQ. She's just been blessed with that. And so she immediately gets information. She understands how things work. So she gets into a subject, and she can learn it really fast, and she can kind of master it. And so she spends a lot of her time, she's at that age, she's 21, senior in college, and she's at that age where she's trying to decide what she wants to do with her life, and she's interviewing for jobs, and she's, having people actually court her and want her to take jobs, which is very flattering to our ego. But I have to keep telling her, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And so I will tell you all that too. We are all very smart people. We have all learned skills in this life of how to do things that aren't our passion. We all know how to do things that we shouldn't be doing. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should be doing something. And how do you know? It should be easy. It should feel like that effortless flow of water, like that effortless flow of nature. And if it doesn't, reevaluate. Now, sure, we all have things in our lives that have to get done. I don't love, well, actually I do love laundry. I won't use that example. I don't love doing the dishes. So we all have to do things. I mean, I'm not probably going to hire a professional dishwasher to come in 3 times a day after the meal. So we do have those tasks. But in general, in our lives, if you don't like it, hire someone. I know the first thing that you guys are saying, but I don't have the money to hire someone to do everything I don't like. Not now. But the more you hire people to do the things you don't like, the more that you are supported in your own creativity, and you are supported in your own direction, you are supported in your own passion. The money comes, and then you hire the next thing you don't like to do. So there you go. Get it done. Steve and I are trying to figure out how we now hire like a house manager, like a personal overall concierge to manage 3 dogs, kids, finances, everything, so that we can just go play. So, should be easy. And then the third thing we learn from nature is to allow dormancy. Allow dormancy. We don't value dormancy. We don't give it the credit that dormancy is due. Again, back to the old Protestant work ethic, we frequently think dormancy is laziness. If someone tries to be dormant, well, why aren't you up doing something? I love that. I used to have that little desk calendar, don't just stand there worried. And I think that, if we don't have anything else to do, then we have to get busy on. So we keep our minds busy and our bodies busy rather than allow dormancy. I think, everybody knows when you start a project, there are 3 pieces of the project: the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? If any of you are writers, you heard it in the story. There are 3 parts of the story: the beginning, the middle, and the end. We have 4 seasons, not 3. Our first season, let's start with spring. That's the beginning. Things get planted, the earth is renewed, seeds begin to germinate, everything starts. Pregnancies happen. I'm talking about the animal world, but hey, take it for whatever. September is the #1 birthday month in, I think in the world, but I know certainly in the United States because of June weddings. But anyway, so spring is the beginning. And then we have summer. That's the middle. In the world of crops, you plant in the spring, and then all summer you watch the crops. You water them, you weed them, you take care of them, you make sure that everything's plowed correctly. My husband, the farm boy from Indiana, can talk way more authoritatively on this than I can. But you watch them over the summer while they grow. And then in the fall, you harvest. That's where you reap the benefits. You harvest it. And then we have the winter. And that's that time of dormancy where nature catches her breath, prepares to start it all over again, gets ready to sow the seeds again in the spring. We don't harvest in the fall and then immediately start planting in the same soil that we have just reaped. But do we do that in our own lives? As a historian, I was fascinated by the work of a British historian named E.P. Thompson. And his work was really on the working class and the rise of the working class. That's his most famous work, The Rise and Fall of the Working Class. And he talked about the transition in all of society, mostly in England in the 18th century, but certainly in the United States in the 19th century, with industrialization. And the toll that took on the human psyche. And I will say that we are still dealing with this toll. Because if you think about the world up until about 1750, we were an agrarian society. Everything worked on these natural rhythms. Everything. When did you wake up? When the sun came up. So that meant you got up at 5 a.m. in June and 8 a.m. in December, because you got up when the sun went up. And when did you go to bed? When the sun went down. So you went to bed at 11 in the summer and 5 in the winter. When did you do your work? Well, we were all farmers. So you went through that natural rhythm that I just talked about. You were pretty busy in the spring planting. You were busy most of the summer, although you had a little downtime, and then fall hit, and it was the busy season. You were reaping the harvest, and that's when women were canning and men were baling, and we were getting ready for that dormant period. And why do our holidays all fall in December? Because that's when we were dormant. We could relax. We had done our work, and we had done it well. And now we had the bounty of nature for us to celebrate with. That's why Christmas and New Year's and Thanksgiving, of course, and all of these things are in this time of dormancy, so that we can rest to gear up to plant again in the spring. And what E.P. Thompson says in his book is that once we got industrialization, suddenly we had something he called the tyranny of the clock, where workers were expected to work in factories from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., whether it was light or dark, whether it was winter or summer, no matter what. And the only time that they were ever off was if the rivers froze enough that they couldn't run the water wheel, which powered the factories. But this wasn't a time of plenty. It was a time of scarcity for them, because now they were wage workers instead of agrarian workers, and so it was like being laid off for the year. So we got this twisted view of our seasons all of a sudden. How many of you find the holidays the busiest time of your year? Certainly in the ministry, that's true. That's backwards. So as we're I'm looking ahead into that time of year, but in everything we do, don't think of your projects in terms of 3 steps, beginning, middle, end. Think of everything you do so that you allow dormancy. You allow that fertile period to rest, to relax, to allow things to be still, to be quiet, to be dormant. Now, how many of you think that will drive you crazy? Dormancy. Thank you, you couple of honest folks. Yeah. We don't do dormancy well, and our society doesn't do dormancy well. How many of you have felt judgment when you wanted to be dormant? How many of you have wanted to take a vacation and had a supervisor or a coworker say, well, it must be nice to take a week off? Yeah. That's where you get to stand in the truth of who you are. And look, because nature is bigger than that boss or coworker. Nature's kind of got it figured out. It kind of does it okay. Every year the trees bloom and the flowers bloom again in spring. Every year crops grow all summer long. Every year we have a harvest. Every year we have a period of dormancy. Nothing's falling apart. It's not like, oh no, we had 3 months of dormancy, spring's not going to come. No, every year. So the natural rhythms of life charge us to really reframe. To reframe from this work ethic that has come about historically with the Protestant work ethic, industrialization. I mean, there are really sound historical reasons why our collective psyche thinks the way it does. But it hasn't always been this way. And it's not a right or wrong, God-ordained doctrine. It's a very human, constructive doctrine that when we step out of it and look to nature, we can flow a little easier. So remember, look for balance, seek balance. Seek balance. If you're feeling out of balance, seek balance. And we feel that in our bodies too. I mean, if anyone ever has back problems, you know the minute you get out of balance. And I don't just mean in your back, because my back is the last thing to go out of balance. My whole life has to be totally out of balance, and then my back goes out of balance, and I go, oh, maybe I should have thought about that before. We want to let it be easy. And if you're working on a project and it's not feeling easy, stop and look for the path of least resistance. How can this be easier? And we want to allow that dormancy so that we can think and reframe and rest and pat ourselves on the back. Job well done. Look at what I just completed. I'm going to celebrate that. You know, we believe that we attract more of what we think about in consciousness. So whatever you focus on, you're going to attract more of. So if what you're focused on all the time and the talk in your head is, I have so much to do, I better not rest, you're not going to get it all done and check everything off, because the universe is going to say, oh, you have so much to do? Well, here's more. Oh, yeah, you think you have a lot to do? Well, here's more. Oh, you have so much to do? Well, okay, here's more. Oh, yeah. But if we stop and allow dormancy and say, you know what? I completed that. I have time to just be. I can congratulate myself on a job well done. The universe is going to go, you know what? You completed that. You can just be. You can allow yourself time to enjoy a job well done. And amazingly, things on your to-do list will evaporate. So, let's look to nature in this time. That we're already looking at nature. We're already looking at it because it's so beautiful this time of year. So let's look to nature while we seek balance. Let it be easy and allow dormancy. Let's pray. So, I breathe into that natural rhythm of the breath. Jeff started with it in his invocation, and let's reconnect to it so that we feel that flow, that balance of the in-breath and out-breath, that ease, so much so that we do it all day, every day without thinking about it. And that moment between the intake and the exhale, where we have that moment of dormancy. And as we breathe into that, we connect to that within us that is so much greater than we are and yet is all that we are. We connect to that God life that shows up and lives through us. We connect to that place within us through the breath that knows how to be in nature, that knows how to be balanced, that knows how to relax, how to exhale. And so I recognize in this time right now, this time where we are reaping the harvest and moving into a time of dormancy, that we live in the natural rhythms of life. We allow the messages that we get from our own body, the messages we get from nature, to supersede everything else. We learn to trust it. We learn to know that all is well, that we can let go, because everything moves in this rhythm and moves in this balance. So I know for each person here that we step into that. We leave here today with a new awareness of our place in the natural world. We leave here today with a new awareness of how we can be that force like water that is powerful and yet never resists, moves easily. And so it is with great clarity that I know for each person here that we go forward this day with a new understanding, a deeper understanding of who we really are. I know that we go forward this day and this week absolutely rooted in that divine life that is all around us all the time. And I know that this brings to each person a sense of peace, a sense of joy, a sense of calm, a sense of confidence that we can go forward knowing that there is only one life. That life is God's life, and that life is our life right here, right now. And so knowing this, I just claim for each person that magnificence and that inspiration of the week ahead. I know that we walk with God every step of the way. And so I just release and give thanks. I give thanks for this natural world that has been created around us and through us and with us so that we can look to it for its lessons at any moment. I give thanks for the individuals who are present and who are part of Foothills Center for Spiritual Living and our greater Evergreen community, knowing that this is a joyous co-creative experience and that it takes our individual consciousness to see the world as it really is. I give thanks that we go forward, able to walk in that one life, that one love that is the truth of all life. And I give thanks for the universal law, the spiritual law, the natural law that makes my words so, even as I speak them. And so it is from this place of profound gratitude that I just let go. I let it be, and I know that all is well. And so it is. And now, if the ushers will please come forward.